Hello and welcome to Lesson 7-3. Today we're going to look at solving multi-step equations with fractions and decimals. Solving multi-step equations with fractions and decimals is actually very similar to doing it without fractions and decimals. So we're just going to hop right in and look at example 1. It says to solve 2/3 n minus 6 equals 22. So recall, we need to go ahead and start by undoing the addition or subtraction. So here, I'm going to undo the minus 6 by adding 6 to both sides. So now I'm left with 2/3 n equals 28. To undo the 2/3 from n, which is being multiplied, I'm going to divide both sides by 2/3. So what happens then is my 2/3 are going to cancel over here, and I'm left with n equals 28 divided by 2/3. Remember, when you're dividing fractions, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep the first term, change the symbol from division to multiplication, and flip the second term. So this gives me 28 times 3 divided by 2. Now when I multiply fractions, I really just multiply straight across. So I really have n equals 28 times 3, or I'm going to go ahead and say 28 is divisible by 2. So this is going to give me 14 times 3, and 14 times 3 is really going to give me 42. So n equals 42. For example 2, I have 2/5 x plus 2 equals 3/4. So I'm going to start out by subtracting 2 from both sides. So when I do that, I'm left with 2/5 x equals 3/4 minus 2. Well, if you remember, I have to simplify fractions, and to add or subtract, I have to have the same denominator. So I have 2/5 x equals 3/4 minus 8/4. And if I change this to plus a negative, I can see that I have 2/5 x equals 3 plus a negative 8 is going to give me a negative 5/4. Now I can go ahead and simplify or get rid of the 2/5 with the x, and I'm going to do that by dividing both sides by 2/5. So my 2/5 are going to cancel, and I'm going to be left with x equals a negative 5/4 divided by 2/5. So if you recall, I'm going to change that to keeping the first term, changing the operation, and flipping the second term. So I really have x equals negative 5 times a positive 5 is a negative 25, and 4 times 2 is 8. So x equals a negative 25/8. For example 3, I have negative 7/12 plus y equals 1/6. To undo my negative 7/12, I'm going to add 7/12 to both sides. So these are going to cancel, and that leaves me with y equals 1/6 plus 7/12. The only thing I need to do here is I need to get that common denominator, and it looks like 12 is going to be my common denominator. So I multiplied 6 by 2, which gives me 2/12, and this tells me then that y is going to give me a positive 9/12, because 2 plus 7 is 9, and my denominator stays the same, and 9/12 will simplify because 3 will go into both. So this leaves me with 3/4. Now we're on to the decimals. Now decimals, although are not very hard, sometimes it's just easier to not have to deal with them. So what I like to do is I always like to get rid of my decimals. So to get rid of decimals, you have to see which number has the most decimal places. So when I look at this right here, I see that I have 1.06, so 0.6 has 2 decimal places. The 3 doesn't have any, and the 0.71 has 2. So because it has 2 decimal places, I always start out with a 1, and I'm going to put 2 zeros because I have 2 decimal places afterwards. Now, if I multiply everything in this problem by 100, meaning I'm going to distribute, I will clear out my decimals. So what I end up with, if I go 100 times 1.06p, I end up with 106p minus 100 times 3 is 300. And then I have 100 times 0.71, which will give me 71. So now I have no decimals to deal with, and I can just go ahead and simplify like I normally would. So I'm going to start out by adding 300 because I need to get that 106p piece by itself. This is going to give me 106p equals 371. And now I'm going to go ahead and get p by itself. So to undo 106 times p, I have to divide both sides by 106. And this is going to give me p equals 371 and 106 both have a common factor, and that common factor is 53. So 53 goes into 371 7 times. 53 goes into 106 2 times. So I end up with p equals 7/2. Now for example number 5, I'm going to go ahead and distribute first. So I have 0.4 times a gives me 0.4a plus, now I have 0.4 times 2, and that's going to give me 0.8, and this is going to equal 2. Well, again, I don't necessarily want to deal with decimals, so I need to see what I have to multiply everything by to clear it out. So I always start out with the number 1, and I see I have 1 decimal place here, 1 here, and none here. So that means I'm going to multiply everything by the number 10. So 10 times 0.4a is going to give me 4a. 10 times 0.8 will give me plus 8. And 10 times 2 is going to give me 20. Now I can go ahead and solve. And I'm going to do that by subtracting 8 from both sides. And again, I'm only multiplying by 10 because I don't want to deal with the decimals. If you like decimals, by all means, you could have, at this step right here, you could have started moving your numbers around and solving for a. So at this point in time, however, I subtracted 8 from both sides. This is going to give me 4a equals 12. Divide both sides by 4. And a equals 3. My final example for today says, suppose your cell plan is $20 per month plus 15 cents per minute. Some cell phone plans are, well, they used to be anyways, were based upon that $20 means that you would pay $20 regardless if you talked 0 minutes or 500 minutes. So you were locked into that $20. So you have 20 plus, you pay 15 cents times every minute that you talk, and you found out that your bill was $37.25. So you have to figure out how many minutes you got charged for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. This is going to give me 0.15x equals 17.25. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by the 0.15. And when we do that, this leaves us with x equals 115. And remember, x is really 115 minutes because our unit is minutes. This concludes the 7-3 video. Please let me know if you have any questions.